People, well, women that had been in the voters' rights movement. It was surreal. When I tell you, it put it all together. It made it a reality from start to finish. They even had shoes of someone that they had worn during the march that were busted up. Like, I would not have been able to make it. And we just did 21 miles, but these people did 54 miles just for what I consider a simple act to vote. But I mean, I know how big it is, but it was just a life-moving experience, and I would encourage anybody to look it up. Sheila mentioned that it's a $25 per year membership fee. It is worth it. Like I said, it doesn't look like it on the inside, but for anybody that's winning, it puts a reality on what actually had it, made it even more important. But it's the National Voting Rights Museum in Salem, Georgia. Not Georgia, Alabama, I'm sorry.
Where's it at?
I did see that museum.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a national museum, is that not correct? It's funded by the federal government? Well, I don't know if it's not.
No, he said it was private.
He said it's private.
Private, it's private, yeah.
Oh, actual membership.
It's private.
Membership and all that, and it's private. Definitely, my partner and I were going to make a second trip back. We did see the museum, we did not get a chance to tour it. But definitely, I think that needs to be documented and shown so that people know. I had no idea that even existed.
Right.
So we definitely have to share that with people, that should be, again, just like we like to go to Washington, D.C. and to the Lincoln Monument. We have to encourage people, when they take a tour for their children, you need to tell people to visit those places. And if we here do not tell people, that story stops with us.
Any other questions? Anybody have questions for these panelists? Anybody?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that's relevant. I think that as a generation, we're a couple of different age groups, but we're similar. We have to worry about the resurgence of racism in a subtle manner in ways we don't really see. And I think that whenever we get to our professional lives or professional worlds, we can't let ourselves become whitewashed and forget about what we experienced here. We need to keep fighting and use our influence, to make the change and to keep it going. You had a statement?
Yeah, I enjoyed tonight. I see a lot of people are here with their families, and I can tell that they have, from all the young people to young adults to older and elderly people, I see they have a support group. But I was wondering, what about the other people who don't have a support system? There's a lot of people, a lot of kids were having problems right now throughout Georgia, throughout the United States. A lot of burglaries and stuff was just happening from youth and cars being stolen and things of that nature, and low voter turnout. So maybe you have the juvenile justice, if tax dollars can start sending some of them to see what we have been fighting for all this time, maybe that can light their pilot, so to speak, so their fire could be burning, where they would thirst for more knowledge of it. We're paying these taxes anyway, we might as well put them to good use. You see what I mean? But I noticed that everyone here has support, but there's a lot of people out there, I noticed they don't have no support. So maybe we can create some type of support system for them so it can help us and not be to our detriment.
I think, again, I'll go back to the question I asked the younger folk. And I think you sort of hit it a little bit on the head. What is your Selma today? And the reason I asked that question is because even in that day, Hoover and everybody knew what the deal was. And that's why Dr. Lafayette and so many had to do different strategies in terms of the unions and so forth had to get together to mobilize to get it together. Because everybody didn't know Dr. King, but there were a lot of people across the country that had the same concerns at the same time. And so Montgomery and Selma sort of brought everything together, according to Dr. C.T. Vivian and some of the others that talked to him. So you got, like you just mentioned, some issues. So my question again would be to your generation, as you reflect back on Selma and you saw what happened as a result of Brother Walter, the unions, and SCLC, and NAACP, Back there was Stick, there was Reverend Jackson. He was a younger generation back then. Your generation today, you're facing some other challenges. And I don't think they're just pulling your pants up either. I think that's a fashion, okay? But the thing is, what you just mentioned some things. What are the things that are facing your generation? How do you apply this, what you got from Selma into the mobilization as you being the Lauries and the C.T. Vivians and the King, Dr. King? Remember, he was a young man then, you know? John Lewis, young men then. See, you are that same panel. So my question is, what is your Selma today and your call to action?
Excuse me. There's actually a bill right now, SB 469, and going to Selma and coming back to this from our legislative committee. It's a bill that actually is trying to slip through the cracks, that is against picketing, any mass demonstrations or anything. And that's, I hate to keep mentioning on civil rights, but these are things that we take for granted. You're penalized $1,000 if you picket, and you're also, well, it's not a felony anymore, but they were proposing that it's a felony if you picket or did any mass organization, anything opposing anything, basically. That's something that I'm kind of on my soapbox about right now, because like I said, there's simple rights that we are taking for granted, and legislation is actually trying to enforce us to be suppressed, and we don't realize it. So it's actually being more active in the legislative process, know what's going on. Because if I wasn't involved with CWA, I hate to say it, I probably would be ignorant to some of this stuff until something came up to where I actually wanted to use my First Amendment rights to picket or protest against something. So I would have to say 469 right now would be my Selma, where I still have the right to picket or protest. So that's what mine would be right now.
Anybody else want to respond to that?
Well, I think my Selma would be the crimes and a lot of the crimes and a lot of the things that young people go to jail for, that we shouldn't go to jail for, or just the racism that slips through the cracks, that people don't try to recognize. Racism is still there, but people just try to let it slip through the cracks. Also, right, they will let our Caucasian person get away with one thing, but if it was a black person, the gates of hell will break open. So they will try to. I think it's just the simple things that we would normally let slip through the cracks that will later become a problem with the hunters. So mainly injustice.
I kind of agree with the other two ladies. Our Selma today is the injustice. It's still racism. It's just, it's not as blatant that I'm trying to just throw it out there as bad as it was back then. You know, I work in a basically Caucasian office, 2 black females, no black males in the whole company. And we just got hired in the past 5 or 6 years. This company's been around for about 20-something years. No diversity. So it's slight things like that gets through. You really don't think about it till you sit back and look at the situation. Okay, that's still a form of racism. Even the Trayvon Martin situation is racism. You know, record tables have been turning. That was a black man chasing a white boy and shooting him. He would have been handcuffed and put in jail right then and there. But they let this other guy, he just goes back home like nothing even happened. So I still think it's racism. It's just that we got to open our eyes and look at things that are going on, because they're trying to slip it in subtly, and we're just kind of overlooking it and not really paying attention.
Same issue, justice and the systematic manipulation of the populace to make you think that everything is cool and everything is all right, and that would be. But I think more or less we can help all that if we could, like you say, connect the dots and bridge the gap between youth and elders, right? I think there's a disconnect right there. And being that there's a disconnect, some of those issues just don't get addressed. You see what I mean? There's a disconnect between men and women. there's a disconnect between youth and elders. I think now, more or less, it's up to us and more psychological, how we view things and how do we want our world to be tomorrow. We don't think we're thinking about that. Not less just being content. I think a lot of people just come to accept that. That's just how it is, man. We can't change it. So more or less like a hopelessness is that what we're fighting against, to gain hope again. And it seemed like people had more hope back then than they would do now. They would just give up.